my God.
So that's the far out weirdness that my scientific journey has taken me to. And, it's exciting to be able to give these sorts of ideas to the scientific community and the public that come from. Remember, I commented that all of my heroes follow their own.
Yeah.
It's exciting to be able to do that and come to these kinds of conclusions.
So there was a scientist in the 40s who came up with the idea of transmitting data, right? Ones and bits.
Yes.
Claude Shannon, I believe.
That is exactly who it is. But there's also a contribution from another scientist named Hamming. So Hamming actually is the one who really stood up there. So you're right. Claude Shannon is a person that came up with the idea of what we both computer scientists and physicists call the entropy content of information.
Yes.
That information itself has entropy associated with it.
Yes.
And he wrote an equation for this. Hamming comes along and shows that if you want to have digital structures that communicate reliably, they have to have error correcting codes built into their structure.
Yes.
And so, as I said, these are my guide stones in trying to understand this very strange result that we have found classical error correcting codes in the context of equations that might describe our physical universe.
Because when you transmit a data packet from one computer here to another computer in Beijing,
the fluctuations in the transmission medium will flip bits, unless you put in a mechanism for unflipping the bits, and those are the error correcting codes. That was basically Hamming's observation.
Right. Okay. So if a computer that transmits data and bits is bound by the laws of entropy, right? So if you have a blank hard drive with no data on it at all, that hard drive would be very low entropy, right? From a purely physical standpoint, it would be either all ones or all zeros.
That's correct.
When you encode data on it, say we store this podcast on that hard drive, it becomes a chaotic mess of ones and zeros.
It could.
Right?
It could.
So that would make it high entropy.
Chaos is typically associated with high, yes.
So it'd be more chaotic from a purely physical perspective. But when you plug a TV monitor or a computer monitor into that hard drive, it gives it meaning. You have the video files or the documents or whatever it is on there.
That's a very interesting point that I hadn't thought about. I'm not sure I'm willing to comment. That's simply a point. I mean, the fact that you actually need to have an actor, namely the video code, that's actually that's ringing a bell with me. Oh, yes. It's ringing a bell with me because a scientist named John Wheeler effectively said the same thing about information in the universe. He said that it's actually a statement called it from bit.
Yes, I've heard of that.
And it's the statement you just made.
Okay. Yeah, because the computer monitor kind of acts like a consciousness.
Yes.
To transcribing the physical raw data into meaning.
Yes, into knowledge, I would say.
So what happens when you erase that hard drive? If it's bound by the laws of thermodynamics and entropy can always goes up, and energy there's net energy can only be transferred, right?
You have exceeded my comfort zone.
That's okay. You've been exceeding my comfort zone this whole podcast, so that's fair. Something has to leave that hard drive, right?
You have exceeded my comfort zone. I am not. When people ask me questions that I haven't thought about, I don't answer them with whatever comes up. I need time to think about it.
It's just interesting. Hear me out, and comment or not. But it's just interesting to me that this idea has been proposed to me that if you crack open a hard drive, well, first of all, if the information on the hard drive could, and there's a gentleman who actually published this theory. His name was Rolf Landauer.
Not familiar with the work.
He said he did an equation that all the mass on all the datas on all the hard drives and server farms throughout the world right now is like if we had the tools to accurately measure and weigh the mass, it would equal like a kilogram of mass. But he said it would equal mass. So if that theory that information on a hard drive could equal mass, since mass and energy are interconvertible, then mass and energy and information could be also interconvertible. So he says if you crack open a hard drive, it's invisible. You can't see that mass. It's electromagnetically undetectable.
Right.
And he made that connection to when we look at universes, the spin of the universes, the center of a universe spins at the same speed as the outer rim. And the dark matter is mass that's flattening the spin rate. So he made the connection to say if dark matter equals mass that's electromagnetically indetectable because we can't see it, then maybe what's in that hard drive could be the same thing as dark matter.
Again, these are not ideas that I have thought about, and so I have no comments to make.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because it connects to the bits and the whole it from bit thing.
Right.
And like could, tinfoil hat, could dark matter be some sort of a computational cloud?
Yeah. This is a very interesting premise, and it's also something that Feynman himself kind of contributed to at one point. Feynman made this very interesting statement at a conference that there's a whole lot of computation going on in order to make physics work, and he found that mysterious.
A whole lot of computation.
Yeah, that the magnitude of computation that the universe has to do in order to get our physics is staggering, or something like that. You should look this comment up if you're interested in this sort of thing.
Yeah, and that leads to like the idea of consciousness.
It does indeed lead to the idea of consciousness.
Like, the idea of can you build up to consciousness from protons and neutrons and electrons, and we haven't found a way to reconcile consciousness from matter.
So if you include in the word build the actions of humans in this process, then I think the answer is yes, you can. Because having watched the progress of computer technology in my lifetime and interacting, as I said to Steve, I've been interacting a lot recently with some AIs, ChatGPT, and why can I never remember the other one? Google has
Gemini.
Gemini. So these are my two friends. Right? I interact with them almost every day, and so having that experience of watching a world go from essentially computers are these big boxes that someone has in an air-conditioned room.
The ENIAC.
And when the first time I was exposed to a computer, it was with punch cards. That's how old I am. They used to have these cards, you punch the holes in it.
Was von Neumann, the one von Neumann?
The von Neumann machine. Yes, the von Neumann machine. And so having watched this evolution of computers from those days to now, my belief, let me say it this way, is that at some points something indistinguishable from consciousness is likely to arise in computers. Now, this is beyond the Turing test. I don't know if you know what the Turing test is. Okay. Right. What I'm talking about is actually beyond the Turing test, because to me, that's kind of a mechanistic first level of consciousness, namely to be able to respond to inputs with reasonable outputs. In fact, from my experience with the recent AIs, they are inference machines. And what I mean that is they don't do calculations, but they infer from the data that you give them a result. So they're inference engines. Inference to me is not consciousness. Consciousness, at least from all of my life experience, consciousness has this element about it where the outputs exceed what the inputs are.
Right.
And that pluses the role of consciousness. And until I see that, Claims of consciousness are not consistent with
because
what
we've
I
all had aha moments where like seems like something just comes to us, right?
Yes.
Where there's like the sum of whatever that is way greater than
the pieces
all
that,
the inputs.
Yes, and neuropsychologists have made statements that have imprinted themselves on my thinking about that. And one of them is to understand that each of us is actually kind of two computing systems. There is the conscious, and that's who's talking to you right now. But there's also the subconscious, which decides that I prefer green to red, right? There's no rational reason why that's true. And there are some writings in the neuropsychological literature that to the effect that the amount of data processed by our subconscious is orders and orders of magnitude greater than what goes on in our conscious mind.
Right.
And therefore, if this is right, there's a part of all of us that is doing even more thinking than we sort of remember and can recall. Mm-hmm. And it's that part, I believe, that generates these aha moments.
Yeah, and then you have dreams where you're processing all of the inputs from the previous day to help you.
Yeah, and in my case, some of those dreams are mathematical. No, literally, it's literally true.
Oh.
It's not a joke. It's literally true.
Your dreams are literally mathematical.
Yeah, it happened. I have people who can testify to having seen that in some of my interactions.
How? What do you mean?
Well, so the most recent example was partly connected to my work at Brown University, mm-hmm. and I had a graduate student who urged me to go and watch a video of a French mathematician giving a lecture on a subject I had never heard of before the lecture online at an event hosted by an Indian research institution. That night, I had a dream. And the next day, I knew the answer to a set of 300 calculations. And it just came from the dream. And I took it to my graduate student and said, write some code and see if this is right. And it was.
You had looked at this the day before?
No, I saw a lecture the day before.
Okay.
And for whatever reasons, my subconscious used it to figure out something. I know it sounds like magic. And
it does sound.
This is the first time sort of I've talked about this experience, but I have a couple of other similar experiences, and a few of them have witnesses.
Whoa. And you were able to do this in your mind, and you corroborated it with a computer?
Well, my student did.
Your student did. And what types of equations were these?
So they weren't equations. They were graphical images that gave rise to equations, and somehow I made a connection
graphical images.
Yeah, like adinkras. These all of the things in question were not adinkras. They're actually a piece of mathematics called permutahedra. But the point was that these are actually relevant for adinkras, and so we were able to write a paper called the 300 Correlators as a joke on the 300 Spartans.
The 300 correlators?
Yeah. I like to have fun when I do physics.
Wow. And there's been many times where you've done something similar by going to sleep and dreaming about it.
There have been other times, yes. But most of them don't have witnesses.
Right.
I just come in and say, try this, and it works.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the crazy thing about the human mind and consciousness is it's that we haven't figured it out. No. And it does seem like magic in many cases.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And
there's a mathematician that's I hold up as the greatest example of this. It's an Indian mathematician named Ramanujan. And he literally, if you read about him, you'll find out he did this regularly.
Yeah, who was the guy who would say he would sleep on sleep on his books and then wake up, and then
That sounds like something similar to something Ramanujan said.
he would wake up, the sleeping prophet.